Peace, family. Peace, family. Welcome to Awakening the African Consciousness. We are so glad that you are here today. This event started by the Black Awakening Movement. The Black Awakening Movement is an organization dedicated to awakening our people to the truth about racism and who we are as a people. I'm so glad that you all are here today, this afternoon, to join with us in receiving information and inspiration. In the words of our ancestor, Dr. Khalid Muhammad, our people are people of rhythm and spirit. So we need to give information, but we also need to give inspiration. So you'll get both of those tonight. We will have some very, very, very powerful lectures here tonight from our elders and from our brother Shaba. We will also have spoken word. Unfortunately, our host and our musician was unable to make it. They were traveling all the way from Chicago, and they had car trouble on the way, so they weren't able to make it, but they sent their love, they sent their Black power energy to us here tonight. So in the spirit of our ancestors, before we go any further, we're going to start with libations and call to the ancestors. I asked Elder Mama Makeda to assist me in this process of giving reverence to our ancestors.
Hotep. Good afternoon, everyone. Hotep. That's an ancient African greeting. And we surely are an African people. We need but look in the mirror and look at each other to understand and to know that we are an African people. We're going to do a libation, and we're going to ask everyone to either find a spot to sit in or stand in just for the moment. That activity might cease for just a moment as we do a libation. A libation in the African sense. A libation is an African tradition, and it is the acknowledgement of those who have gone before us, whom we call the ancestors. Those whose shoulders we stand upon are the ancestors, those who have gone before us. And in traditional African society, before any kind of a celebration, before any kind of a meeting or a gathering begins, there's always a libation. And the purpose of the libation is not only to acknowledge the ancestors, but it's to call them forth. It's to ask for their presence, to ask for their approval, and ultimately to ask for their guidance in whatever it is that we are about to do or to engage in. So just for the next few moments, if you could please have everyone's attention, have silence, and if you are able to stand where you are, if you are able to stand, please stand just for the next few moments as we do the libation. And the door has just come open. I'm not sure if that's because somebody's getting ready to come in or that was the ancestors letting themselves in. Traditionally, a libation is done with water and a live plant. In place of the live plant, we will use the bowl to pour the water in. Water being the substance of all life, water being 80% of who we are as human beings. The planet cannot survive without water. We cannot survive without water. Water is the essence of all life, and libations are generally always done using the most precious commodity, water. If you're standing next to somebody, just reach out and touch their hand if you can. Just reach out and touch hands if you can for just a moment. We're going to call upon the African forces or powers of creation. Right now, we're calling upon Amen and Amenet. We're calling upon Keku and Kekuet. We are calling upon Tinubu and Tinubuet. We are calling upon Heku and Hekuet. We are even calling upon the Red, which is the heavens. We are recognizing the holiness of Ged, who is the earth. We are recognizing the holiness of Mut, the mother principle. We are recognizing the holiness of the air, Shu, without which we could not breathe. And we are recognizing Hapi, the holy waters of the Nile. Right now, we are expressing Hu, which is authoritative utterance. We are manifesting Sia, which is exceptional insight. We're understanding that there's more to the unseen than there is to the seen, that there's more to the unheard than there is to the heard, that there's more to the unknown than there is to the known, that there is more to the unfelt and untouched than there is to the felt and the touched, that there's more to the unspoken than there is to the spoken. We ask Sister Segment, please pick up the water. And each time I say hotel, you repeat the word hotel. We're going to, as the ancients did, we're going to rise like Kepler with each sunrise hotel.
Okay.
We're going to, at midday, we're going to shine like Ray at its hottest point in the midday hotel.
Okay.
We're going to set as Ptah with each setting of the sun hotel.
Okay.
When the sun seems to have gone down and hidden behind the horizon, we're going to be just like Amen. We're going to be there, but we can't be seen. We're going to hide or be hidden as Amen does. Hotel.
Okay.
Again, we're calling upon the holiness of the universe, the holiness of creation. Ged, Mut, Shu, Hapi. We're saying Hu and Sia. We're saying Amen and Amenet, Keku and Kekuet. Hotel. We're saying Tinubu and Tinubuet, Heku and Hekuet, and Nuet. We're saying hotel. To all of those who came before us, knowing that we are the children of 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 the children stolen out of Africa, who knew that this date was coming in 2018 and there would be a gathering right here in Opa-locka, Florida. We are saying hotel. To all of those whose bones lie watered at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, we forget you not, and we are saying right now, hotel. To those who stood up to a system that systematically oppressed and repressed and depressed and repressed them, yet still they rose because they knew we were coming here on today. We say hotel. Right now, we are reclaiming our energy. We are reclaiming who we are. We are recognizing the divinity of the air, the space, the time, the water. We are recognizing the sacredness in each one of us here. Right now, we are recognizing who we are as the children of the children of the children of the children of the children stolen out of Africa. And we say hotel. unto all of the ancestors, known and unknown, to all of the ancestors who made a way out of no way, to all of the ancestors who still await us to open the door to where they are so that we may follow in their footsteps. Right now, we say, Hotel,
Hotel.
Hotel,
Hotel.
Hotel,
Hotel.
Ashe, 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 Hotel. Thank you. You made me see. Hotel, Hotel.
Before I go any further, Mama Makeda, as the elder man, asks for permission to proceed. Thank you. Beautiful. I hope y'all felt that. So as I mentioned before, we have a line of very, very powerful lectures tonight. The first will be coming from Mama Makeda. And as I was sitting there, I was thinking I didn't even ask her for her bio, but I'm about to tell you what I know about Mama Makeda. Mama Makeda, she started joining the Black Awakening Movement Open Discussions a few months ago. But her introduction into the knowledge and what we consider to be our awakening started a long time ago. She told me that her awakening started with reading the autobiography of Malcolm X. And we all know how Malcolm X can change your whole perspective on things. That's how I came into my awakening, is by listening to, by our speeches. And I've never been the same since. So for her, it started a long time ago as a teenager. And since then, she said that she wanted to speak like Malcolm and fight like Harry. What's up, Mama Makeda? And right like who? Like Maya, right like Maya. Speak like Malcolm and fight like Harry. So that's what she has been doing throughout her life. She has done many other things in that time. What she has gifted us is a wealth of knowledge and wisdom, and to really understand the situation that we're dealing with and the people that we're dealing with. She has helped us in decoding the English language and learning the psychopathology of the alpha male or the white male, as we commonly refer to him. And so today she is going to be bringing us more knowledge and wisdom from her perspective. So keep your ears open. If you have paper, take notes. And we will have some time towards the end of her lecture for questions as well. So please give a very warm, powerful welcome to our elder, Mama Makeda Baker.
Again, good afternoon to everyone, and thank you for your presence. We drove down yesterday, and it's a long way to come to Miami, Florida. Long drive, but I am so glad to be here. First time ever in Florida. First time ever in Florida. I'm glad to be here. I am even more glad for your presence here this afternoon. And I think I've got about 45 minutes to get through this. I'm going to do my best not to bore you. I am going to do my best to keep your interest, and I'm going to do my best to share information and data that I have to share with you. I'm going to start by calling on the holy word of the ancient ones with Hotel, Chief Isidore Yoda, Diakabudi, I imagine parent and Machi Petty Soup, Yemen Hotel, Sia Eke, Sia Eke Tuna Jeru, Aqua Seven, Naomi Rejet, Amshisham, Jabu, Resheka Ma'at, Keru, Duakata, Duaheru, Rubentawi. And that's from the ancient language of our ancestors, the Canaanites, out of Kemet, out of Egypt, as the Greeks called it. I do have some talking points for the next few moments. We're talking about awakening Black consciousness. If I talk too fast, tell me to slow down, because I'm conscious of the time. If I talk where there's a reverb or you understand, raise your hand and tell me to stop, and I'll try my best to change it. But we're going to be talking about awakening Black consciousness. First and foremost, our historian, Dr. John Henrik Clarke. I love me some Dr. John Henrik Clarke. And one of the most powerful things he ever said was, this container does not fit your soul. And he was talking about the culture and the society and the oppression that we are living under as an African people. He said, this container does not fit your soul. I see a couple of heads nodding as if they heard him say that also. That's one of the most powerful things he ever said. And we are a people, understand and understand that we are a people who are living outside of our correct cultural energy matrix. We are a people living outside of our correct cultural energy matrix. Understand that we as a people, as the children of the children of the children of the children of the children stolen out of Africa, we were birthed in an environment of humanity. And that's humanity spelled Humanity. We were in a culture that birthed humanity. And in that culture, we valued our elders, we cherished our children, we respected our culture, and we revered nature. However, we are currently living in an environment that is anti-human. We currently live in an environment that is anti-human. And it's anti-human because it devalues, dehumanizes, denigrates, demonizes, intimidates, vilifies, and uses us as scapegoats. And this same culture has succeeded in inferiorizing us. INFEARIOR. It has succeeded in inferiorizing us. That is, subjugating us to the point where even we say second-class citizenship, and also inferiorizes because as soon as we see somebody that don't look like us, a white person, what I call an albino, as soon as we see them, something stops in us, something grabs our attention, something makes us do something. We send our children out and we tell them, don't you make those white folks mad. We tell them, you better act like you got some sense. You better come home the way I sent you out. You tell them, I gotta work with these white folks. There's something in each and every one of us that has been inferiorized in this culture. We have been a people who were captured, placed in captivity, we still are, and held hostage since 1619 in this country. We were captured, held hostage, and placed in captivity. Please understand, overstand, and understand that emotionally, politically, economically, socially, and spiritually, our energy, our true energy, that is our true nature, has been co-opted. And it was co-opted to make way for a fraudulent, racist ideology called white supremacy, or which I call albinoidism. Our energy has been co-opted to make way for us to bow down and be subjected to this thing called white supremacy, which is a fraudulent, racist ideology. We are here in Oklahoma, Florida, to awaken our African consciousness. We are here to reclaim who we are as an African people. We are here to rise a little bit taller because we know we stand on the shoulders of the ancestors. And when you stand on the shoulders of somebody, you can't help but stand a little bit taller. We are also here to return to our correct cultural energy matrix. And does anyone know real quick what the word matrix means? What is it? It's a who? A network or system. Okay, anybody else? A matrix. The definition of matrix is the word womb. W-O-M-B. It is a womb. So we're here to return to our correct cultural energy matrix. In other words, the original womb that birthed us. We're here to return to that. And we are here to restore ourselves to cultural unity. We got that? Cultural unity. Anybody know what melanin is? Melanin. What is melanin? Anybody familiar with that word? Melanin. What is melanin? It's the pigmentation in the skin. Or coloration. It's the pigmentation in the skin or coloration. And years ago, to justify racist ideology, the Albanoids said it was a disease that we had. That it was a disease that we had. But melanin is a very complex neurochemical. It is responsible for, listen to this, melanin is responsible for creation. It is responsible for coloration. It is responsible for sleep. It is responsible for eyesight. It is responsible for hearing. It is responsible for the proper functioning of all body systems. Even thinking. There is a center in each one of our brains called the substantia nigra. It is a collection of melanin in the center of the brain called the substantia nigra. We need that for proper thinking. Real quickly, Michael Jackson, everybody knows, he told everybody he had a skin disorder. That's why he lost his coloration. Michael didn't have a skin disorder, losing his coloration. Michael removed his skin color. Michael had his skin cells removed. Our skin is our sleep system. So when he had his dermis and epidermis, which are the layers of the skin, when he had that removed, guess what? He couldn't go to sleep naturally anymore. And that's why he needed doctors around him to put him to sleep and then do what? Wake him up. Because he could no longer go to sleep naturally. Anybody been in the store, CVS, Walgreens, Walmart, and if you go where they sell the vitamins and the herbs, they got something they call melatonin. Don't you ever buy melatonin again, because you naturally manufacture that every night in your body. But it's on the market for guess who? Guess who buys it? Albanoids buy it. Why? To put them to sleep. Why? Because they don't have the release of melatonin brain that does not allow them to act and respond normally as people of color. And the people with the most color on the planet are the African people, us. And we're going to get into that in just a few minutes, and I got 33 minutes left here. Listen carefully when I say that our blackness, which is our darkness, is our sacredness. If you look at the word darkness, D-A-R-K-N-E-S-S, you will find that when you unscramble that word, you will get the word sacredness, S-A-K-R-E-D-N-S. Our blackness, our darkness, our melanin is our sacredness. One of the biggest kept secrets on the planet. And we need to understand that in order to reawaken our African spirituality, because somebody else knows it and is keeping it from us, and they're co-opting all of our energy for their benefit, our disadvantage. Do we understand that? Do we understand that? That the word darkness, when you unscramble it, when you decode it, is the word sacredness. And that's what our melanin is. When they talk about space, they call that the what? The black what? The black what? They call it the black hole. They call it the black hole. And there should be a W in front of that word whole, meaning completeness. Because that's where the melanin of the universe resides, and they say that that's where the galaxies are birthed, in the black hole. Babies grow where? Stand up, brother. What did you say? They grow in the sacred darkness of those sisters' womb. They grow in the darkness of the sister's womb. That's where all life forms, in the sacred center of the female, and it's all completely dark. And what surrounds that baby in the darkness? Water. Sacred water. Water and darkness is creation. Food. All of those foods that we go to the supermarket to get, that's laid out with prices on, they grow that food where? In the darkness of Mother Earth. Our food supply comes from the darkness or sacredness of Mother Earth. Somebody in here is a karate expert, aren't they, or judo or something, and they have degrees of that, don't they? The highest degree is called what? The black belt. The least degree, the neophyte, the one who don't know nothing, has a what kind of belt? Has a white belt. The more you learn, the more you know, your belt gets more colored until it's a black belt. When that judge comes in that courtroom, for whatever kind of court it is, what kind of robe does he wear? He wears a black robe. He ain't coming in there in yellow. He ain't coming in there in white and orange. He comes in there with a black robe. And when they talk about having a formal event, what do they tell you to wear? A black tie. And the women come and dressed in what? That little black dress. To understand what is holy and sacred about this thing called blackness and blackness. Sorry about that, y'all. So we understand what is holy and what is sacred about this thing called blackness and melanin. That is our sacredness. Now, humanity humanity. And I spell humanity, Humanity. Humanity has a sacred center. Do we know that? Sisters nod her head. Humanity has a sacred center. That sacred center is pineal gland. Sisters pointing to it. It's called the pineal gland. Have you heard of the pineal gland before? And I've got a couple of slides that we're very quickly going to go through up here. And thank you, Bobby Liv, for assisting me. We're not going to go, this is a lecture from previously. We're not going to go through all of it. We're just going to very quickly go through some of the slides because we've got 27 minutes. The pineal gland. If we look down at the very last one, it says chemistry. For every person who has taken the class chemistry, chemistry is actually the study of black. The land Egypt, which the Greeks named, was originally called Kemet. And the word Kemet means black. And the people called themselves the Kemites. And Kemet was the land of the blacks. We need to know that it wasn't Egypt, it's Kemet. And the word chemistry comes from the word Kemet. So that chemistry is actually the study of black or blacks. It is the study of melanin, and it is fraudulently called Egyptology, which is an entire field of science. And the word Egypt, which the Greeks fraudulently renamed the land, the word Egypt, GYP, means pigmentation. So in calling the people Egyptians and the land Egypt, they were calling it the land of the people with the color. Understand that. They were calling it the land of people with the color. Can we go to the next slide, please, Mom? We're not going to go through all of these. These are just from a previous lecture. Anybody in here ever heard of Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop? Hotel. Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop had a two-cradle theory where he talks about the origin of people from the southern cradle and the origin of people from the cradle and why there are two separate mindsets and two separate behaviors and two separate outcomes when dealing with those type of people. That's another lecture altogether. But we're talking about the pineal gland, and the pineal gland is located in the brain, in the mid part of the brain, between the left and the right parts of the brain. It's located deep within the brain for safety and protection. That is your seat of humanity. That is your seat of humanity. As we said before, melanin is a complex neurochemical. Drop down a couple of lines. Everybody in here, when your dad's sperm met with your mom's egg, one of the first things that occurred was when that egg and that sperm met, there was something called a melanin sheath that surrounded that egg and sperm to protect it and to aid it in growing. Melanin is so prevalent in the body that it's necessary even for the formation of life. We have to understand that. And when people don't have melanin, it's called amelanogenesis. That's a real word. I did not make it up. But again, all of this is from another lecture. We're not going to go into all of that. But amelanogenesis is what happened when certain people lost the activity of the pineal gland of the body. Next slide, please, Mama. Next slide, please, because we're down to 23 minutes here. And thank you. The pineal gland is part of an elaborate, what's called endocrine system. Everybody in here has what's called an endocrine system. All of us don't really hear about it unless somebody happens to become a diabetic. And then you'll hear about the endocrine system. But the pineal gland is part of a complex body system called the endocrine system. And these hormones that are released are for the balance and regulation of the human body. Melanin and serotonin, two chemicals, are released by the pineal gland. The pineal gland is responsible for their manufacture and their release. Serotonin and melatonin. Next slide, please. People are depressed. The medications, the antidepressants they use, often have chemicals in them that manipulate the levels of serotonin and melatonin in your body. Melatonin is stimulated by sunlight exposure. We are a sun people. We are a sun people. Dr. John Henry Clark identified, he said there were the icebox people, there was the sand people, the Asians, and the sun people. We are a sun people. We love the sun because it what? It warms us, it burns us, it regenerates us, it makes us feel good, and it stimulates that area in the brain where our pineal gland. Sorry, I keep moving here. I've already mentioned that melatonin is sold in the drugstores as a sleep aid. Black people should not be buying melatonin because we normally and physically manufacture it in our bodies at night time. However, if we engage in things like drinking, drugging, or doing things that are counterproductive to our bodies, we can interfere with the production, with the normal production of melatonin in our body. The ancients, our ancestors, said that the pineal gland was what? The third, what do you call it? The third eye. And what is that? The window to the soul. The human portal. That's where our humanity resides. That third eye, that window to the soul. Esoterically speaking, I am so sorry. Esoterically speaking, it's where higher consciousness resides. Our humanity, higher consciousness, is our holy place. It's our Abu Simbel, which is a place in Kemet. It's our holy center. Next slide, please. We're down to 19. Is that the slide? Okay. Go to the next slide, please. I don't think we want that. I'm not sure what's happening with our slides right now. They have some, yeah, go to the sides. Just click on it. That got Bob in a good one there. I'm not sure, I don't think this was one of the slides. That talks about the origin of bullying, where the origin of bullying came from. And again, this is from another lecture. Give us another slide, please, Mark. Here we go. We've all heard of the word negativity. Well, I coined this term, negativity. And that's not to be desecrating us. It's not to be desecrating us. It's not to be humorous. It's not to be funny. But when we look at what the definition of negativity is, negativity is energy reassignment. Before we were ever invaded by the outsiders, by the Albinoids, there was a code of humanity that we lived by. There was a code of humanity that we lived by that we don't live by anymore because we're not in our correct cultural energy matrix. When the invaders came, they brought such a negative energy and such untoward behaviors that the ancestors had to come up with a word to describe the kind of negative energy that the invaders brought to the land. And they called that word Isfet, I-S-F-E-T. They called it Isfet. And when Isfet came to the land and turned our culture upside down and turned our culture inside out and began committing genocide against our people, capturing, detaining, and enslaving us, that is the co-optation of your natural and true energy, to the point where now we no longer operate on our natural energy platform, but we are operating out of an unnatural energy platform that I call negativity. And negativity is energy reassignment. When I can look at you and call you out your name, when I can look at you and tell you you ain't no good, when I can look at you and dehumanize you the same way the system has dehumanized all of us, when I can look at you and denigrate you the same way the system has denigrated all of us, when I can look at you and devalue your life the same way the system has devalued all of our lives, I am living in and practicing negativity, which is energy reassignment. Energy reassignment. It is the corruption and conversion of one's original energy matrix. Understand that. This is my definition of it, and it's kind of formal, and it may even have some words that might be a little intimidating, but do not, I'm sorry, hold it down. I'm sorry. But do not allow the words to, let me get the microphone. Please bear with me, guys. But negativity is the collective, constant, and reinforced disruption and corruption of universal matter, which is our melanin. It is the interruption and disruption of our universal matter by transmutation of the natural order, by the natural order of how we are supposed to be living. It is corruption of our melanin, which causes a bio-shift and reversal of action in us. It is the asymmetrical rearrangement or transubstantiation of DNA's genetic dark matter, which is what? Energy, resulting in us being lopsided, upside down, backwards, unnatural. We are all of that in physical, psychological, and behavioral practices, simply because we are living outside of what? Our correct cultural energy matrix, and it's called negativity. Albert else don't have a problem with saying nigga, do they? Don't have a problem. We don't even have a problem. That's my nigga. I gotta tell you this real quickly. My dad and my stepmother, this was years ago in the 70s, got into an argument. We were somewhere in a relative's house, and my dad called my stepmother a nigger woman, and she got real angry behind that. And he couldn't figure out why she was angry because he told her I'm a nigger man. And this was my dad who was raising me, and I'm like, what? That this is what he thought of his wife and of himself. Well, my God, if that's what you think of yourself and your wife, what do you think of me as an offspring? That he had been so inferiorized by this culture that he was raised in and born in, that he thought of himself what the culture defined him as a nigger. That's when you are living in boundaries of negativity, because it's energy what? Reassignment. Next slide, please. We're going to be wrapping this up real quickly. Dr. Jacob Carruthers, if anyone has ever heard of him. Dr. Jacob Carruthers, he's an ancestor now. He was one of my professors at Northeastern University in Chicago. And Dr. Jacob Carruthers would always talk about the ancestral deep well that we all have access to if only we know it. We all have access to that ancestral deep well, because without the connection, our cultural self is unobtainable. We've seen movies or pictures where somebody is lost in the desert and they're looking for cover, they're looking for shelter, they're looking for water, they're looking for another person. And off in the distance they see something, and all of a sudden they're revived and they're going towards what they see in the distance, and they go to it and they try to jump in the water and they try to talk to the person that they're seeing, and all of a sudden it just turns out it wasn't nothing but a mirage. It was just an image, it wasn't real. Dr. Jacob Carruthers said if we don't go back to our ancestral deep well, we will forever be chasing the mirage and the oasis. We have to go back and connect with those people who came before us. We have to go back and connect with those whose shoulders we stand upon. We have to go back and connect with those who left footprints for us to follow. We have to go back and call upon those of the ancient ones, those of the days of old. We must go back. Dr. Ray Hagins, if you've ever heard of Dr. Ray Hagins out of St. Louis, Dr. Ray Hagins said, and I kind of added to his saying, but he said, whoever determines the circumference of your thinking will determine the diameter of your existence. During enslavement, you were not allowed to read or write. That was a crime for which you would be murdered for. That was a crime because it was decided during enslavement, we don't need smart Negroes. We don't need learned slaves. I only need you to know how to chop cotton. I only need you to know how to spin cotton. I only need you to know how to make furniture. I only need you to know how to shoot horses. I only need you to know how to build fences. I only need you to know how to raise my children. So that our thinking and our learning had to stay within that circle of which we were placed in purposely to keep us from striving for and reaching for and knowing. So Dr. Hagins said, whomever prescribes, and of course I added to it, whomever prescribes the circumference of your thinking determines the diameter of your existence. And there's a word up there called agnotology and another word called stultification. I learned those about a year ago. And that is deliberate. Those are academic words. And that's deliberate ignorance forced upon people by keeping you from your real information. Isn't that something? Isn't that something? That's deliberate ignorance forced upon a people by keeping information away from us. I'm going to close right here when I say this. Know what your melanin is. Love your melanin. Embrace your melanin. Protect your melanin. Respect your melanin and grow your melanin by doing all of these things surrounding it. I've got to look at this and know that this is where universes come from. This is the black hole, what it is comprised of. Without this here, I can't go to sleep. Without this here, I can't think properly. Without this here, my body will not function properly. All of these diseases and disorders and all of this crap that we're faced with in this culture is not natural to any of us. And we've all been vaccinated with what I call the mark of the beast. We've all been vaccinated with all of these germs that are unnatural to us, that are actually harmful to us. So I'm saying to love, preserve, protect, respect, and grow our melanin. Dr. John Henry Clark, besides saying that this container does not fit your soul, he also said that the African gave the world its first humanity. He said the African gave the world its first humanity. And he said, is it going to be up to the African to give the world its second humanity? And we are on time doing this lecture. I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you for your attention. Thank you for your respect. And thank you for your patience. Hotel. There are actually about 6 minutes left. If anyone has any questions or any comments, if not, we're going to move the program around. Yes, sir. The word God? No, it isn't. And in fact, we didn't even have a word for religion in our languages. We did not have a word for religion. We didn't even have a word for church in our languages. The word God, which when you do it backwards, is the word dog, and according to the ISIS papers, Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, anybody familiar with Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, talks about the relationship that the white community or the Algonquin has with the canine community, and the story of Romulus and Remus, I think it is, with them being orphaned and raised by wolves, and them identifying with the canine family so strong that that's where the term man's best friend comes from. Not another human being, but a canine, a dog, someone who walks on all fours and cannot talk. There ain't nothing wrong with being a dog if you're a human being. If you can communicate with another person, but your best friend is a roof, roof dog. I think there's something amiss in that thinking there, but the word God actually comes from the European language, and the word theology, which is supposedly the study of God, but it is not. It is actually the study of the white male as God, because the word the, T-H-E, when decoded, is actually the word white. And I do a lot with the language. I do a lot with the language. The language actually reveals the mindset and the behavior of the people who created the language. Every language will reveal the mindset, the culture, and the behavior of the people who created the language. So that when we're talking about the word God, that came out of the European male mindset, and he placed himself as God for worship. And that's where the theology and the theological and all that stuff comes from. Yes, sir. Say that again. Govern over men. Dominion over men is the word God. Yes. governance, we had governance. Governance, meaning that there was a code of human behavior. There was a code that we lived by, which took away the necessity of having people who were controlling you and over you, but that there was a code of human behavior that everyone was bound to exist by, to the point where there is no disrespect, there is no evilry, there is no this and there is no that, because as a human being, I have to recognize you as another human being. The language of our ancients, one of the languages is called Medu Neter. That's the language of Kemet, or the language of Egypt, Medu Neter. And that word means, those words mean divine speech. And the concept, and each language will tell you the mindset of the people who created it. And that Medu Neter, divine speech, the ancients recognized that language, the ability to communicate human to human, didn't come from another human. It had to come from a higher power, whether we see it, know it or not. It had to come from something outside of ourselves, something greater than ourselves. So they called the language Medu Neter, meaning divine speech, so that every word that came out of my mouth had to express divine speech. It couldn't be obscene, it couldn't be disrespectful, it couldn't be ugly, it couldn't be this, it couldn't do that, it couldn't cut you down, it couldn't do this, it couldn't do that, it couldn't do that. It had to reflect that it came from a source from which the human came from. Therefore, everything that I think, everything that I say has to reflect who I am as a creation of the Creator. And every language, when we study the language, it will divulge the mindset and the behavior of the people who created that language. Any other? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Speak a little bit louder, please. Yes. Absolutely. Yes. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And one reason that when they talk about the gospel, the gospel means the gospel, and I'm not making fun of nobody at all, but all of that is in the word gospel itself is the word spell. In the word song is the word spell. So that all of these language is being used negativity. Our energy, our original thought has been co-opted to the point where they know the secrets that were kept from us for centuries once they invaded our land, and they are now using that same knowledge and that same wisdom and that same information against us, and we fall for it every time. Any other questions? Yes, sir. Hotel.
I'm sorry, I'm late on another thing. I want to ask you a quick question. Since you speak about the language, what can you do to the far island? What can you do to far back there? I mean, we got negativity. What's the opposite of that?
Wow, that essentially comes from another lecture that I did, talking about the deception of the English language. Once we decode the English language and find out the hidden idioms, the hidden words, the hidden phrases, and the negativity that's hidden within the English language, then we will use the language not as we're using it, but use it in its decoded form to release the energy that's in it, to release the veil that's in it when we speak English as we ordinarily do. But as we learn any other words that come from our ancestors, just begin using those words. Just begin using them to yourself, using them to others. For instance, my license plate on my car says hotel, H-O-T-E-P, number 1, hotel. But then I greet people, hotel, ashe. And whenever and wherever I can, I speak to my people heart to heart, not in using English language, but using the language of the elders, the language of the ancient ones. And it doesn't matter which language, whether it's Kiswahili, whether it's Ashanti, whether it's Twa, whether it's this or that, but to begin to use a language that is outside of the negative energy meaning every word that comes forth out of my mouth. But Akaru must be true voice. I can't lie. I can't be deceptive. I can't deceive you. I can't do anything, say anything to harm you. Akaru comes out of my mouth. Madu nature comes forth out of my mouth. And even though we live in a culture that is completely and totally opposite of who and what we are as a people towards each other, we've got to recognize the melanin divinity in each one of us. And we've got to embrace ourselves and embrace each other as we throw off the cloak of English and Europeanism and Albinoism. There are some things that we can do. It's a process. It was a process of centuries getting us to be able to say, and there's a process to undo that because we've all been hypnotized with it. And there's a process we have to go through to dehypnotize ourselves. But it can be done. It's little bit by little bit. But once you start doing it, you'll be amazed at the progress that you begin to make. And if there are no more questions or comments, I'm going to turn the program back over to Sister Rhonda. Again, I thank you. I love you for your presence. I love you for your patience. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being a part of. And again, I say, hotel, 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 and Ashe, and Ashe, hotel.
So can we stand up and give a round of applause for the elder Mama Taylor, please? So while we're waiting for our next lecturer, Brother Shavo, to set up and get ready, I'm going to give you guys some spoken word. I don't know if I said that when I first got on the mic, but I'm a spoken word artist. My name is Rhonda Sekhmet Ra. When I came into my awakening in 2014, I felt really compelled to do something, and one of the most natural things that came to me was poetry. I always wrote poetry. And as I began to learn more about what was going on with our people, what was going on with oppression, these poems started coming to me. So I just wanted to share one. Hopefully I'll get the opportunity to share some more later, but this piece is called Queen. There is a story untold of a queen once covered in gold. Someone stole her riches and labeled her kind mistress. She is subjected to servitude, suffering a sour on the outside called rule. Her only survival was to remain subservient under the master's whip, as she bore his children from her hip. Her womb was poisoned by the oppressor's force. Her dignity was stolen. She was labeled a whore, ripped away from her king, made to feel like less of a human being. And through it all, she still managed to remain strong, even though society told her that this was also wrong. She turned fractions of gold into small kingdoms, giving her family what they needed, turned crumbs into meals, pain into laughter, all under the whip of the master. And she never built kingdoms that had long been lost because, after centuries, she forgot that she was queen. Oh, queen, I'm here to remind you who you are. Oh, queen, they took you so far from your kingdoms. But now it's time to redeem them. Let no man be such a child to you that you anything less than royalty. If they try to give you copper instead of gold, let them know that ain't for me. Assume your rightful position on the throne if he can. Treat you like a queen. Let him call Tyrone, tell the media to take the welfare out of the queen, because they done messed up the real meaning of who you are, what you can be. Tell them, bow down, peasant, when they approach with the TDC. I know that I'm a queen, but that'll make me better than you that just rescued me from the psychological dungeon where they threw me and renews me. Knowing as a queen I deserve nothing less than respect and dignity. And I'm no longer going to accept this mess they've given me. And I can have all the power I so desire if I realize I'm a queen and I'm higher than the second class they put me in. I'm no longer going to pretend that this don't bother me. I'm no longer going to be your slave servant. You see, I'm feeling a lot more like Queen Nefertiti. And when you realize your power like I realize mine, you start feeling a little bit more divine in this fake jewelry. Don't feel heavy because this gold embedded in my soul. Put there by my ancestors some long time ago. In a time when we knew who we were, where we began, and we ruled the land that we lived in. And my queen now we're so far, far away. We've come so far, far astray, but remembering ourselves is the first path to redemption. My ancestors came to me to mention that you should stop begging peasants and taking orders from those who don't know your true worth. That, my queen, is how you uplift the curse, wipe away your tears, and put on your crown, and never, ever, ever, ever let these fools get you down. I promise you things won't be as hard as they seem if you could just remember that you are queen. divine feminine, we're going to hear from the divine masculine. We have Brother Shaba, who is going to be our next lecturer. And I'll speak a little bit about him as he's coming. I met Shaba, I believe it was early 2015. He was one of the first people that showed interest in the Black Awakening movement. And I remember always listening to Shaba was like reading a whole bunch of books because he had so much information just rolling around in his head. And he was always reading, he was always studying, he was always finding a way to process this information to give back to our people. And since then, he's done a lot of things. He's went on to teach our children, to teach some of our youth that are incarcerated, and done probably a lot of other things that I don't even know about. But I'm very, very excited to hear from him tonight. I hope you guys will very much enjoy what he's about to bring. So keep your ears open, keep your mind open as I present Brother Shaba Koyo.
I apologize for the technical difficulties. You know, my equipment is failing me apparently. It's my old DJing equipment, by the way, so it's like what, like 20 years old now? So it's still holding up. I know how to use it, so you're not gonna hear any technical difficulties from me, because I know how to hold it and caress it and stuff like that. Welcome. Why are people sitting in the back? Like there's seats over here. Get uncomfortable. Like sit up in the front. Like we're free people. I'm serious. Come on, let's be free people. Come on, free people. Free people sit up in the front. They get their portion of the food. That's what we've been saying, the word hotel, since we got here. Does anyone know what it means? Peace? Anything else? Go ahead, speak. I was trying to get the cordless mic to you, but I'm not on the cordless anymore.
When first meeting each other, it's Yim Imhotep, which is each person would say that to the other, which means I come in peace, or we come in peace towards each other. And when we're partying, it's Shem Imhotep, meaning may you go in peace, and that's what we would say to each other. So upon singing Yim Imhotep, and party, Shem Imhotep. And it's just saying that I give you my peace, you're giving me your peace. You're recognizing the divinity of one another through that thing.
So basically, in the Meta Nature, the symbolism or the pictorial is like a platter of food, bread, really a platter of offerings, if you will. The same gift that you would give to the gods, you are willing to give to a stranger that you are meeting for the first time. And what it says is, the divine in me recognizes the divine in you. And I greet that divine in you because I already know you, because I know myself. So therefore, that's the kind of relationships we've always fostered with one another, that we recognize divinity first, and we gave those offerings to one another, even in our greetings. So that's something that I read. I don't know if Rhonda said I read a lot, but I try to get the deeper meaning of things and share that freely. Now we also use another word, Hashem. We use that word this evening as well. Does anyone know? Anyone want to take a stab at that? We agree? That's one. That there is some spirit involved, yes. The spirit of what? The spirit of creating, right? So basically, in the Yoruba, the understanding is that there is a power unseen, a creative power unseen that rests in the universe, and that it cannot be owned. It can be given, it can be received, it can be built, it can be developed and transferred, but you cannot own it. And this is the power to create, the power to build, the power to manifest. So when we say Ashe, what we are doing is we are calling that power and giving it, again, freely to the person who we are gifting Ashe to. So you are giving them the power to bring into being their reality. Ashe? So now hopefully we have two deeper meanings so far, right? So what was the first one, Hotep? So when you say Hotep, what are you saying? Well, we started with peace. I'm recognizing what? No, what am I recognizing in you?
Divinity.
I recognize the divinity in you because of the divinity in me. And that is what I'm reading. I'm not, your name, sir? Duan. I'm not saying, hey, Duan, what's up, Hotep? I'm saying, Hotep, I see all of your ancestors. I see your lineage. You're here because of your ancestors. I recognize your story. And that's who I'm reading, all the power that you come. And you should recognize that in me also. That we're just not simple people that sit in the back of buses. That we have a story. That's why I didn't want people sitting in the back. So that's Hotep, right? And then Ashe. Anybody want to go with Ashe? Ashe? The creative power of the universe. So the same power that makes the stars, the solar system, the galaxies, that's the power that you're invoking in your speech, and you're saying, oh, you're gonna go to the store? Well, take this with you. Oh, you going to work today? Take this with you. You're giving it to them, right? So in both cases, it's gift. It's gifting, right? Something that you don't own, but you recognize and you're passing along to really build each other up. But that was a long way to say hello. Hello, everyone. Hotep. I want us to understand the power behind these words, behind this language. Because we're stuck in a language now that strips us of our power. And the gentleman asked the question earlier, which is what I'm really here to discuss, mythologies. The gentleman asked, where does God, or the word God, come from? Well, I brought you the answer, luckily, right? It's in my phone. It's in your phone too. Have you ever looked it up?
Yeah, plenty of times.
What does it say?
Well, the English language is basically what it says. I gotta go through it. I have so much in my head. Basically, God is a divine being in English language. But what I studied was like, it was what she said. If you know, from the Jack, I'm watching it, not the Jack, but derived from all being in verse.
I want you all to get very familiar with this word. The word is German. 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 Like the German, right? Like Adolf Hitler. Old High German. Oh, Proto-Germanic is another way to say it as well. Right? You ever wondered why there's a new Hitler movie or two every year? World War II, they're always trying to show Hitler in some kind of new light. Some glorifying of what? Of their mythologies, of their images, right? And the highest image currently in the European culture is that of the Germanic mythologies, which is where the word that we use to describe divinity nowadays comes from, Proto-Germanic word, God. comes from the word Godin, or Guden, or Wooden. This is from Old Norse mythology. That's that German, Sweden, Norwegian area, right? These were the people that held out against the Romans for the longest and were never conquered by the Romans.
Also known as the Vandals, the word vandalism came
Yes.
from the same
The
people.
Vandals as well, correct?
Yes.
Correct. The Vikings, these were the uncivilized people of the north, the Norsemen, right? So these people, having never been conquered by, at that time, the great empire of Rome or Byzantium, became the aspiration of the Europeans. They became the purest form of resistance of the Europeans. They became the symbol of wilding out. Right? So, Guden, G-U-D-A-N, Golden, G-O-D-A-N, Woden, right? W-A or W-U, right? Which is all related to Odin. Who's Odin? The Norse god, right? And then we have the Black Panther mask over there. Well, recently, the Marvel Empire has made Thor Odin's son. So the same Odin that's represented in your Avengers and your Thor movies is where the Proto-Germanic word for God is referring back to. And by the way, the attributes of Woden or Odin is what they ascribe to as their godhead. Right? Primarily the warring attributes. Okay? So one of the mythologies that we're first going to cover, because we just covered that mythology, so another mythology that we want to cover is the understanding that in European culture, the strongest God wins. Which means that if your God loses, it's your fault, or it's his fault, because he was unable to protect you from me and my God. Do we understand what kind of world that can create? What kind of world can that create?
Might makes right.
Might makes right. It creates a conquest-oriented survival. It creates a situation where a grown man can rape a little boy and feel okay about it because the little boy's God was unable to protect him from me and my God. Are we seeing any of that on television right now? I'm sorry, brother? Maybe not. But there was this behavior back in the days too, where, particularly in Rome, particularly Caligula, there used to be this thing where anyone who was getting married, the emperor would be able to break in to the wedding, right? And rape the wife and the husband as a wedding gift, right? That was his right as king, right? Where do these things come from? It comes from the mind, right?
Yes.
Comes from your ability to think about them and then act upon them and then feel justified that your God can't protect you from me and my God. Are we understanding the dangers of mythologies right now? Because there's also, it gets deeper. There's so much deeper mythologies that exist. Let's speak about this one. That police have the right to pull you over. Where does that come from? Slave patrols. Who made this stuff up? Judges. Who made governments? Right? We were just speaking about this governments versus governance, right? So we wake up every morning living under mythologies. Mythologies that were created to fit a Germanic concept, a Germanic construct, a Germanic matrix. Are we following this?
Yes.
Europeans, at the time that they conquered Kemet, they decided that they were going to make one thing more important than anything else, and that was writing. And it was through writing that they were able to sustain their war against us, right? Because they no longer had to be responsible for their actions. They could write it any way they saw fit to write it. They could write away their incorrect actions, their immoral actions. They could rewrite things. They could get rid of people who wrote things that they didn't agree with. Let's talk about one person that they got rid of, who they didn't like his writings or his interpretations of their writings. Let's talk about Arius. Has anyone ever heard of him? Arius? This brother shaking his head, Arius. What have you heard of Arius?
Well, basically, Arius is, I'm trying to remember because I'm in 325 Iris was one post that disagreed.
So he's going in the right direction. So Arius was sent to Constantinople from Alexandria. Anyone know where Alexandria is? It's the Greek capital of Kemet. So basically, when the Greeks eventually succeeded in conquering Kemet and subduing the law and order of Kemet, they decided they didn't want to keep the old capital of Memphis. They wanted to build an entire new capital. So they built it in Alexandria, which is a small island north of the mainland of what they call Egypt today. So in that area, which is where the Coptic religions also come from, there was a Christian priest at the time, Arius, and he was summoned to go to the big council, like a big church conference, where they were going to decide some things on the Christian belief or the Christian faith. And what they were trying to figure out was the divinity of Jesus. They wanted to figure out if this dude was really divine. They wanted to figure out if he was really God. And Arius disagreed with everybody. They said, well, you can't have anything equal to God. There can't be a Trinity. And all three of those things can't be equal. So the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit can't be. This was Arius' argument. Right? This is also called the Arian theory as well. Right? He was saying, well, where I come from, because I'm coming from the source of the information. I'm a little bit north of the source of religion, of spirituality, of mythological stories. I live in the land of the gods. I live in Ta-Seti. I live where all these stories come from. You can't take these stories north and then rewrite them however you want. So allow me to be the authority on this thing. If we're talking about any kind of Trinity, then we need to be talking about Asar, Aset, and Heru. And we need to model anything that we're doing in the future after that, even if you want to change the story, but you can't begin to change it so drastically that we don't recognize it anymore. Well, he was ultimately dismissed. They said, thank you very much. Please go back to Alexandria. You're out of your element. You don't understand what we intend to do here. We're going to do it our way. We're going to write it the way we want to write it. And we're going to dispatch people to make sure that your point of view really is moot. Back then, there was really no Facebook.
So,
Really?
so, so you couldn't live stream getting your door kicked in and being assaulted with swords. There was no way to live stream that, right? So, however, he and his brothers who disagreed with the Holy Trinity were dealt with. So what I'm saying is that prior to 325 AD, there was no Holy Trinity. This was mythology that was created by people in a room like this. I'm sorry? You want to create some stuff right now? Or you want to create, you want to make some stuff up? We can make some stuff up. All right? I said I was going to go on my phone for something. There's an origin of the Virgin Mary as well. Pulcheria. Y'all have these phones, right? I find out so much stuff on my phone. Pulcheria. Pulcheria. Has anyone ever heard of Pulcheria? Well, Pulcheria decided that she wanted to do what so many Kemetic women had done before, particularly Hatshepsut.
Wow.
She wanted Hatshepsut. She wanted to be recognized as a god on earth. Now, luckily for Hatshepsut, it was our practice that the pharaoh, which is an incorrect word, let's say the leader of the Kemetic people, was considered divine. And this is all the Europeans ever wanted. They wanted access to that divinity, right? So any ruler on the throne of Kemet was considered divinity, a son of God, right? The living Osiris, the living Asar. And that was done through blood lineage, because you had entire dynasties, right? And basically with Hatshepsut, her brother, who was younger than her, was slated to be the next leader. But he didn't know he was a little child. So she said, well, I'm going to carry the responsibilities of the land of Kemet. And she got really good at it. And she said, like some women before me have done, I'll just become pharaoh. And so she was sworn in as pharaoh. Right? And this is where we get into the debate, oh, she was a cross-dresser, she wore men's clothes, and this and that and this. Well, have you ever seen a female judge? What does she wear? The same robe as what? Have you ever seen a female police officer? What does she wear? Same uniform as a male police officer. How about a firefighter? So when you're an official of a country, of a land, you're going to wear the attire necessary to fulfill that role, right? Because being a leader of a nation is a position that requires a certain kind of dress. So yeah, you have to wear the prosthetic beard to some of the festivals, right? She married. Don't get it twisted. It's just that none of her husbands she ever really transferred her power to, right? She also created the Valley of the Kings because she didn't want to be buried in the same fashion as all the pharaohs had done before her, which were in the pyramids, right? So she says, I'm going to switch it up. And by the way, it was a very successful mission to create the Valley of the Kings. And her mortuary temple out there is beautiful. It's just all you go visit that. I had the privilege of going out there for 2 weeks. Beautiful trip. I went out there with Brother Tony Brown. I went to the land of the gods. I went to the land where gods come from. Right? Tony Brown. Something very peculiar that I understood when I got into the temples in Kemet is that the Kemetic people were not the last people there. Meaning that after they were forced to vacate their temples, other people moved in. Europeans moved in. And they said, we need to whitewash all of this stuff. These deities cannot remain black. And they started doing very peculiar things like putting up crosses all over the place. So when you walk into these temples today, you're going to see graffiti from the Christian era, chiseled into the stone. Crosses. What they would do is they would take the Ark of the Covenant. Has anyone ever heard of the Ark of the Covenant? Well, there are many temples in Kemet. And inside these temples, there's a place called the Holy of the Holies. This is where the local deity comes to rest in the land with the people. Because we weren't a myopic people. We were people that said, since we understand Hotel, and I understand your divinity, and I understand that you have a different lineage than I do, then you worship differently than I do. Your temple is there, my temple is here. We can come together for festival time. We can come together if we have a disagreement about this river or this plot of land. But I'm not going to walk into your home and tell you how to worship your ancestors. And the same, you're not going to walk into my home and tell me how to worship my ancestors. So we had many temples. And in these temples, we had a room called the Holy of Holies for the local deity. Dozens. And inside this Holy of Holies, we had an altar. Anyone know what an altar is? Because nowadays, there's only like one of all of these things, right? It's just one. Even though we have 700 churches probably in a half-a-mile radius from here, and they all have altars, we consider it basically all one altar, right? But we considered all these altars to be different, and on those altars we had that box, right, called the Ark of the Covenant, with the two wooden sticks and the deity on the top, and that's where all the secrets were kept, right? A lot of scrolls and things like that. Well, what we got to see was that all these altars and all these boxes were destroyed, most of them anyway, and replaced with this myopic point of view, this politicized point of view called Christianity at that time. But that wasn't the end of it, because the Arabs would later come in, right? And they would push the Christians out, and then they would take over the same spaces, but because they didn't use or depend on symbolism as much, they would just erect mosques right on top of our holy sites. So even today, if you go to the Temple of Luxor, because so much excavation had been done, the actual temple would be about 2 stories below, where Kemet had built up to at that point. So when they were excavating about 2 stories down into the ground. So when you walk into the Temple of Luxor and you look up, you'll see mosques built on top of the temple. All right? So basically, what this got me thinking was, there's something about the land that people keep coming back to. Even Abraham went to Kemet, didn't he? He went there pretty early on, right? Sarah went with him. Was Sarah with him when he went? All right. Moses, where's he from? Huh? Where in Africa? He was born in Kemet, right? He's a Kemetic exile, right? He chose to leave. Jesus, where did he grow up? He grew up in Kemet. Remember, he went back into the Middle East after growing up in Kemet. Let me ask you something. Where did you grow up? Harlem, New York. What do you know about the Miami school system, having grown up in Harlem, New York? Yeah, like did you grow up going to Miami high schools? So pretty much it's broken, right? But where's your education from? Oh, New York City education, right? Where do you think Jesus' education was from? The majority of his young life. Right? Where do you think Moses got his education from? What is it about this land? So this land is where we decided that we were going to collect our stories from all over the continent. And we were going to try to go back as far as we could recollect. And we were going to write it down on papyrus. And we were going to write it down on any medium we could find. And we were going to chisel it into the hardest stone that we could find. This was a collection. I need you to understand something. Like we spoke about Dr. John Henry Clark and his colleague, Professor Dr. Yosef Ben-Yaakov. They always say that Egypt is the oldest daughter of Ethiopia. Yes. Right? So what we're talking about is traveling down the Happy River. Right? You're going back to the source. Right? So you have to get to Ethiopia to begin to get closer to the source. And when you get to Ethiopia, you find out that there's even a further beginning of the river, right? Because you found out you've only been really traveling down one of the legs, right? So when you get to Ethiopia, you realize, well, I still have to now turn south and head towards the Mwanza Nyanza, right? What the Europeans call Lake Victoria, in that Kenya region, in that Congo region. And who comes out of this region? The people that we call, or the Europeans call the Twi people, the diminutive people, right? And they brought with them a particular guy named Bess up from that rainforest region, right? And you find Bess in all of the temples in Kemet, showing that our story had a beginning somewhere, right? And even from the center of Al-Kebalan, the center of Africa, the center of that Kenya, Congo Republic area, we spread out from some went south to South Al-Kebalan. The same people that we call Zulu today, right? The same people that practice that Ubuntu. Anyone ever heard of Ubuntu? Yeah. Right? Another philosophy of Al-Kebalan living, right? Peoplehood. I am because we are. You familiar with that saying? Right? So basically, what we ended up doing as far as mythologies are concerned is we ended up creating stories about how we lived and how our ancestors lived, right? And because the stories were so long in distance, we decided that we were going to create mythological stories around them, right? And all these mythological stories were for one aim, to help children memorize the ancestors' stories. Just like you have the Tooth Fairy today. Just like you have Saint Nick, Santa Claus, right? Huh? You just want to memorize these stories so that as you grow older, you already have the rhythm in your head. So even Asar or Osiris, right? Some say that he leads back to one of the original founders of Kemet, even before Menes, right? One of the original founders of high civilization. And they said, well, we don't have his original name. We don't have all his original deeds. But what we can do is we can deify him. We can elevate him to the status of a living God. And we can make him a shining example that all subsequent kings should aspire to be like. Right? We have another deity, Ma'at. Anyone ever heard of her? Ma'at. Ma'at is the law. The law that you govern your heart by. That you hold yourself accountable to. No one came and kicked off your door and said you broke section 4, code 3 of Ma'at. Here's a fine and some prison time. That's ridiculous. That is a ridiculous way to live. There's this mythology that police can pull you over for not wearing your seatbelt. And they can. But they say that they have special training that they can see when you're not wearing your seatbelt. Have you ever heard of this one? What do you think that is? Special training that allows them to see that you're not wearing it. Is there any special training that allows you to see something you can't see? It's mythology. Because you repeat a lie often enough and people begin to believe it. And you teach it to your children. Now I can't even drive to Publix, which is like less than a walking distance from my house, without my children. I hear click, 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 click. I think somebody's like we're going to Publix, bro. I'm not even gonna get above 25 miles an hour here, right? But the fear that these mythologies create is what we really need to start concerning ourselves with. The European God concept is created around fear. Fear of what? Of hell.
Death.
And prior to fear of hell, they beat the hell out of you. Because that's how your parents taught it to you. And they're still beating the hell out of you. Especially in Al-Kebalan, when they send little Al-Kebalan children to Christian schools to be civilized. Meaning they need to learn a European language, whether that's English or French, right? Or Spanish. They need to learn how to eat with forks and knives and what all those, why do you need 700 spoons to eat one bowl of soup? It's French. We just used to turn the bowl, turn the bowl up, right? Yeah. Right? Just turn the bowl up together. They ain't gonna put like water with some yams in it. But they'll beat the hell out of you if you don't use the right spoon, right? They clap you on your knuckles with the thing. Well, when we were coming up, my age, then the teachers used to beat the children. That's mythology also, by the way, beating children. That's a mythology that we got out of enslavement. What kind of submission? Because I've struck my children when they were young. I haven't done it in a long time. I had a conversation about it on family vacation too, right? I was like, wait a minute, I was wrong about this. My bad. I thought I was right, because that's what my parents taught me. I thought I was supposed to spank my children. It turns out that children's ears work the same way adult ears do. And they turn on relatively early too, right around that 3-4 years old. You can reason with children. They might not be able to communicate as well as you want them to when you're angry with them for not doing something you asked them to. But to think that you can beat proper behavior into them is a mythology that we picked up from enslavement.
We covered a lot of things. We got what, 5 minutes, 6 minutes? I was trying to have a conversation with you. And it seemed like I did most of the talking. Huh? Let me go back in my phone. Got some stuff in there. I didn't finish explaining Pulcheria to you all. We got caught up on Hatshepsut, and then we took another journey down the Nile, which I found myself doing often. Anyway, it turns out Pulcheria was this 14-year-old girl, and she lived in Byzantium. This is the end of the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire was torn in two by war, by being unable to keep out the Germanic people. So the Eastern and the Western Empire had to split in order to consolidate their power in the West, because the Vandals were overrunning the eastern portion. Rome is like the most conquered European place in history. Every time somebody new conquers Rome, the Pope just says, okay, don't kill us, and we'll incorporate you into the story. We'll add you to the mythology. You'll be seen as liberators. They did the same thing to Hitler too, when Hitler conquered Rome. They said, okay, it's all cool, don't kill us, and we'll write you into divinity later on, that'll be fine. Didn't work out. Hitler kind of lost that war, but it could have been a different place. So Pulcheria decides one day that she's gonna go, because she's empress, she's gonna go to the council and see what they're dealing with, right? So she walks in and they're like, well, you don't belong here. And she's like, well, first of all, you don't know me, right? I'm Pulcheria. And I've erected an altar to myself in this city to worship my own virginity. Basically, Pulcheria, being an empress, decided that she had higher aspirations. She wanted to be a god. And the best way to become a god is to spread the story that you're a god. And the first thing you do if you're going to be a god is you set yourself up an altar. Because if nobody's coming to worship you, what kind of god is you? So you set up an altar, and you decide on the reason why you're setting up an altar. You don't say, I'm setting up an altar because I'm cool, or I'm hip, or I'm turned. You set up an altar to yourself because you're 14 and you've been able to hold on to your virginity. Just like who? Just like Mary. Well, there was no Mary per se back then, right? I'm giving you the story of Mary. So this is pre-Mary. So she wanted to be a goddess like Isis, like a Set, right? Who the Greeks had already translated into Greek back then. So remember, the Greeks went first, they conquered Kemet. They took all the stories and they translated them into Greek, okay? Then the Romans came and translated everything into Latin. Because nobody spoke Romans, no? They spoke Latin, right? And then now, as you get into Constantinople, she's saying to herself, well, I want to be closer to this Greek goddess who is actually a representation of this Kemetic goddess, Set. I want the people to worship me the way they worship this Greek goddess in Greece, the way they worship Set in Kemet. I want to be a goddess. And what ties me into that story is that I'm a virgin at 14. Well, you're the empress, right? That's fine. I'm not here to tell you what age to give of your virginity. I'm just saying she set up an altar to herself. Simple. You can set up an altar to yourself. I have an altar in my home set up to my ancestors, right? Anyone can do it. So she says, not only am I a virgin, but I'm the one that's watching over the infant king, Theodosius II. So therefore, I am giving you God. I am giving you the divine, because they had adopted the practice back then, just like in Kemet, that anyone that sits upon the throne is divinity. So therefore, she's the protector of her younger infant brother who can't protect himself. Then not only is she a virgin, but she's also raising God. Theodosius II. And you follow? So he would eventually die at like 14 or so. And then she says, I get to do it again. I get to marry somebody and give you God again. Are you following this? Made it up. Just made it up. So eventually she garnered so much attention for herself that they held a special council of Ephesus in her honor. And they deified her story. And they said, and it's been translated since, they said now that this little girl, the virgin, mother of God, is now going to be written into the annals of the European story. So prior to that, they didn't have an actual European example. So she would become the European model to write the Latin and the Greek and the English version of the Virgin Mary's story. So she would become the prototype for their story. Or I shouldn't really call it their story. I should call it their plagiarism. Right. So my time is right. I didn't get to finish that story. Oh, questions. Time for questions. Pulcheria. Grab your phone. Is that your phone? Type it. Pulcheria. Or Council of Ephesus. Pulcheria. Pulcheria. Empress of Byzantium. Yeah. Her father died, leaving an infant son. Her father, Theodosius I, died, leaving her infant brother, Theodosius II, on the throne. And she pulled an Hatshepsut, basically.
So, going to ask you a question. Since the Europeans had the ability to come up with a story, we, not being our understanding mind, this is the whole story. What stopped us from creating our own knowledge?
Well, the truth is we don't have to create anything. We can just kind of go to our original story. And we can build upon them, right? So we don't have to just stop there. We have the power to create. That's what Ashe is about. So there are parts of our story that may not work for us right now. Ashe, brother. Ashe. And if you don't even want to turn to those stories and you can find helpful ways to help us create, then Ashe. Because they're doing it every day, bro. They're doing it right now. Trump is rewriting all kinds of mythology. He's got it right now. For little children to be in prison because their parents were across the border. And then they send back the parents to keep the children. And that's somehow okay. We got here worried about FEMA and FEMA camps and stuff. Like they're doing this stuff. And they're like making it okay. Men sit in a room and say, well, they ain't got no guns to make it not okay, so guess what? It's okay. Mythology. The same mythology when the Anglo-Saxon came into existence on the planet. That's mythology as well. You read Marimba Ani, Yoruba, right? This was when the Europeans were at their weakest and they said, we need a story to all rally behind. Let's create the Anglo-Saxon mythology. That we are the true holders of power on this planet. And all they did was they took it from another mythology that the Catholic Church had created because they had given themselves the power from God to take over the whole planet. They just sat in a room and said, we want to take over the whole planet militarily. We can all agree to do that in this room. Mythologically, say that God gave us the power to do this and then go about the entire planet usurping all the resources and killing anyone that gets in our way. So I need you to understand how powerful these mythological stories are. Their life and death. And until we regain our understandings of our mythologies, or we create new ones to get us out of the situation that we're in, we're going to be subject to their mythologies. Which ain't nothing but a bad plagiarism of our stuff anyway. Turn for their benefit. Don't get it twisted, there is a us and a them. And if you don't believe that, then you're living in a much more mythological world than I am.
I am a big proponent of books. I love books, books in hand. And I've been saying for the last several years, get you some books, buy you some books, keep them, because books are going to become obsolete. And the information that is contained in the books is changing via what's happening with the new books that are coming out and information that's being offered over the internet. And that one of the best examples is being that the Trail of Tears, when the Indians were removed from their land, and it's being rewritten that they voluntarily gave up their land for the new people who were coming to the country. Get you some history books, order books that are out of print, get you some books that contain the correct and rightful information in them, so that when another generation comes and says, oh no, that never happened, you've got your documentation there to show that they have, the newer generation has been hoodwinked, has been brainwashed, as Malcolm said, they've been had, because the truth is now being cloaked and hidden away from everyone. Get you some books and treasure those books. And I had never heard of Pulcheria before today, and never heard of it.
Speaking of books, Mama McKay, they did it before. They pulled a Library of Alexandria. Has anyone ever heard of the Library of Alexandria? What is that? Collected from where? So every temple served many functions. And one of the functions that every temple served, and I told you there's dozens of them, was the local university. Right? So when the armies of Alexander the Macedonian came in with his minister of education, Aristotle, they collected all the scrolls from all the temples. And they brought them to Alexandria, which would become the new capital of Kemet, right? And then they basically copied them, or did whatever they wanted to do with them. And then the library mysteriously burned down.
Yes.
So don't think that people can't play with you. And I told you, writing has become their number one weapon, right? So it's one thing when you have all the source information and all the originals, and then you decide you're going to edit it the way you want it edited. And then you're going to bury the original so deep or burn them up. And now you get everyone to abandon their story, their Ashe, and to rely only upon their written word. And since it's written, it is written. say somebody wrote down on a piece of paper, brother, go kill yourself. You gonna go do that? Because it's written. So then it ain't that important. I'm not saying education and reading is not important, but if there's some things that don't sit with you, then get up from the table. Go write something that sits with you for your children. Any further questions? Fine.
Is it true that all the information is still sitting, some of the information they took is still sitting in the Roman Catholic or Vatican?
So, I've never been there, but a lot of people say that it's there. I can't confirm nor deny that.
Every new religious Bible or any religious scripture comes out, they have to say something.
Right. I don't have access. So, a lot of our scholars say that it's there, and I'd rather believe our scholars than anyone else. So if they say it's there, I'm going to trust their information. Right? But beyond that, does it really matter?
I would suggest a book for a brother called Rocks Cry Out by Horace Butler. He talks about those libraries down in the Vatican.
Yes.
Where he did a lot of research. And that book is great. And that book is awesome because what it is it's a reference point. His research is impact. Really want to do some learning, that's what you have to do. Cross-referencing is what we fail to do with that book is loaded with resources for you to cross-reference and you'll find facts and truth.
So, as I said, the Vatican or Rome, the seat of Christendom. And don't let anyone remove the Catholic Church from Christianity. So basically, if anyone is preaching Christianity to you, then you need to ask them about all the sins of the Catholics. And how come that hasn't been sorted out yet? But that's a different lecture. The point that I'm trying to make is, know that your story was collected, edited, and then hidden from you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So when you're reading parts of your story that sit well with you, ashe. When you're reading parts of your story that don't sit well with you, keep it going. Keep it moving. Because so much of it seems so familiar to us. Because it is. It's our edited stories. But they put in the parts that are going to make sure that they stay in power. Right? I wrote down this one thing that I wanted to say before my time is up. I wrote this down on the way back from the gym. Take care of your temples, people. I got this good, I got yours. There is only one European law on the planet. Memorize this law well. You ready for it? You don't gotta write it. You're gonna get it. It clearly states that the white man must be in control. That is the only European law on the planet. The only European law on the planet reads to you like this: the white man must be in control. Part B, Section 8. All others must concede to this law in order to have a chance of a life of servitude to the white man. I wrote this on my way back from the gym. Did I tell you? I had just done some bench presses. My brain was working. We must continue our efforts and come up with new ways to combat this law. I didn't say to change it. What did I say? I chose my English words very carefully. I'm about to drop the mic, but it's my equipment. I'm out.
What's up?
One thing I want to mention, we're getting ready to go into intermission. One thing I want to mention before we did that is we were talking about books. We have a suggested reading list on our website. We weren't able to print too many of them. It's a long list. But if you go to blackawakeningmovement.com, you look under the section of recommendations, you'll see a recommended reading list. There's a lot of different books and readings on there. This is a collective list that our scholars have recommended, different organizations have recommended, and any of our people who are really interested in raising consciousness have added to the list. So please check that out. Again, we have some handouts in the back. Also, while we're waiting, I'm going to remind y'all again at the end, but please, if you're on social media, please follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Look up Black Awakening Movement. That's Black Awakening Movement. And some of the resources that you're getting, some of that information y'all might already know, but share it with someone who doesn't know. Our people need this information so that we can all get on the same page and the same vibration. So we're going to go into intermission for about 15 minutes. We have a vendor over here who has some fly stuff y'all can see from right here. So definitely support the vendors. I have some of my spoken word books as well. If you're interested, I also have free bookmarks. So definitely support the vendors. And we'll take this time for a brief intermission. Thank you guys. They used our bodies as capital for cash, and to the north and the south fought for capital and cash. And we shed our blood to fight for freedom in this nation. And with 1 foot barely out of the plantation, we built businesses and new towns. But you know what happens when that black dollar starts circulating around? They burned our businesses and turned our cities into ash. And now they say that's a thing of the past. As black people work for white people already similar to 100 years ago, and struggling is the norm for black people, how do we get back our black dollar, our black power, our black economy? How do we get back to the way things used to be, where gold frequently passed through our hands, and riches came easy to the black man, where we had our own and protected our own, trying to reclaim the power we have seemed to forsake, invest and protect, rebuild and remake, and follow the blueprint like Claude taught us. Powernomics. Isn't it ironic? You give your money to your slave master. He used to make you work for free. Now you give your money willingly to the same people that own private prisons that act as new plantations. The same people that own corrupted politicians and corrupt the politics of the nation. The same people that put money up to see that Zimmerman walks free, but that Tyrone gets life and works in prison for free. The same people that you give your money to without question. You think that your money is a blessing, but if you use it to fund those who control oppression, you will never know freedom, only transgression against your people who need you. Black people are the only ones who can free you, but instead of funding them, you run to that white store to buy that white corporation's latest product. You must have forgot that you were and still are their product. We give money to people who wouldn't mind seeing us dead. What's wrong with our heads? Did we lose it somewhere in commercials, capitalism, and commerce? Did we forget the worst? Or are we blind? I pray that there's still time to show appreciation and reverse the depreciation of the black dollar. Black people, it's time to rule again. Withdraw from their system. Take your green dollar, make it black, and watch it come back to you tenfold, kind of like we used to do with gold. Watch the black dollar crash the stock market until they have no choice but to run to the black market. Now the one behind internet screens and secret codes with the black dollar, where we sell instead of being sold, where we buy instead of being bought, where we support our own no matter the cost, where we circulate our dollars until we see freedom and the return of our kingdoms. This starts stone by stone. Matter of fact, this starts at home. Create a revolution with your spending. This is only the beginning. Black people, we can no longer barter. It's time to recognize and bring back the black dollar. I hope y'all can see some black dollars over here with the vendor. We're getting ready to go into our next lecture. The next lecture we're going to bring on is Baba Khalil. Baba Khalil, he has been working in the movement and the struggle for our people for a long time and in many different ways. He's worked with organizations. He's also worked in the healing field to bring healing to our people, but he's also brought healing to our people in his work for the community. So Dr. I don't know if you want to refer to Dr. Baba Khalil is going to come and bring us the information and the wisdom that we need to get to the next level. With no further ado, give it up for the elder.
Say hotel, I can say peace. I can say a lot of greetings that we give. I'm kind of going to touch base with some of that. Again, I wrote something also last night, this morning. Say I'm a person in long-term recovery from the crisis of racism, from the grips of racism, which is white supremacy or world domination. I inherited the effects of intergenerational terrorism, psychological manipulation, and self-destructive behavior patterns. Since 1989, I have acknowledged that the only way to break the grip of self-destructive thinking and behavior is to use African-centered informational filters that transform oppressive thinking to unified, liberated thinking. In writing this, what came to mind is racism is a mental illness. We know that it's a mental illness. My commitment to myself and to us as a people is to make sure that I present something on racism as a mental illness, as a disease. In order for something to be, and this is not what I intended to talk about, but I just want to prime for what's coming. Racism is a disease. In order for anything to be a disease, from a medical perspective, it has to have 6 characteristics. Everything in every disease has 6 characteristics. It has what's called an etiology. It has what's called signs. It has what's called symptoms. It has what's called course. It has what's called prognosis, and it has to have a way of being treated. One of the things that I intend to do the next time that I pick up mic up within the next year is to present a full dossier and information on racism as a disease. But at the moment, I'm just going to present to you that with racism as a disease, that etiology, every disease has an etiology, and the etiology is the reason why. It's the cause. We can look at the cause of racism being white oppression, white supremacy, because they have oppressed us and have affected us in many ways. Etiology, signs, there are many different signs of racism as a disease. We can see that we can look in the news media and see that. We don't have to try to figure that out. Symptoms are more subtle. You can't necessarily see a symptom, although signs and symptoms can be coupled with each other. But symptoms are more of those internal things that have to be spoken at the same time as the signs. It's almost like if you go to a doctor and the doctor see you coming in and you have to walk with a limp, he can see that sign. But he don't really know what's really going on with you until he asks you and you tell him, and then you give him the symptomology. Every disease has a course. Course is the direction that disease will take if it goes untreated. Prognosis, every disease has a prognosis. Prognosis is the predictable outcome under treatment. And every disease has a way to be treated. So I want to make sure that I commit to putting some of that on paper. Rhonda was saying, and she's introducing me, I work in the behavioral health profession. I have a doctorate in psychology, a doctorate in different types of ministry, and I have been working in the field probably for at least 40 years. I cited the date 1989. I'm a product of the indoctrination of the 50s, 60s, and 70s. I'm 67 now. I mean 66. I'll be 67 on my next Thursday. Thank you, Mom. My parents, I was indoctrinated by the system, but also by my parents and the miseducation education of the American public school system. My life was a contradiction on so many levels. I was against drugs, but was a drug addict. I shot heroin, cocaine, coupled with Colt 45, Richards Bird, Mad Dog, and whatever the local wine was at that particular time. I rejected the idea of enslavement, but couldn't stay out of jail. I couldn't accept being a Negro, but was a real nigga. Third, played, but couldn't hold my temper. I desired to be a father, but abandoned my children. I hated everything white, well, one except the white girl in my life, because I identified white with power. And I could feel more like I had power if I had a white girl. I called myself a lover, but practiced hatred, not realizing that you can't transmit something that you don't have. I was black and really proud. I fasted during Ramadan. I'm one of them guys, right? I grew up being introduced to the consciousness of our people when I was about 14 years old, maybe 13 years old. I was one of them guys that was singing "I'm Black and I'm Proud" with James Brown. About 1989, now understand, I'm skipping a whole lot of years. I ran with the Muslims, the Panthers, the Moors. You can't think of one of the organizations that I haven't run with and been a part of. I've taught people from every level of what we studied. I was real black, real black. Also, I used drugs. I kind of mentioned that. Now, I'm putting this story together for you so when I give it to you, you understand why this is so important to me. Around 1987, I made a decision to stop using drugs, and my consciousness became a whole lot clearer because for the first time I was thinking without a chemical mind. With all of the hatred and anger that I had inside of me, I always thought with a chemical mind. So here it is now. I'm in school, and I had got involved with an educational program, a Head Start program, to be in my children's life to make sure that they knew who I was. And I was introduced to Sojourner College. To me, it's probably one of the only real black institutions that it is. However, I should say that it's closed right now, like most of our important institutions. We don't get behind and support like we should. Anyway, I guess about my second year, I had an assignment. It was an independent assignment. It had me interrogate my social, vocational, cultural self-definition using my parents' occupation as a touchstone. My father was a cold storage labor, teamster. He got up 4 o'clock every morning, left out for work, got to work and put on his jumpsuit. My father never missed a day off of work for 30 days. 30 years, at least to my knowledge. I know the only time that the first time I acknowledged him being missing from work is when I had got locked up for a severe charge and broke his heart. In any event, he also, by the way, worked next to the jail. So when I got out of jail, I could always go get some money from him and get home. That was funny. But I never wanted to be what my father did. Now, he took care of the family. He made sure, I can tell you that my parents were together 62 years when my father passed. 62 years. They were married before my brother was born, who was older than I am. So I don't have the stories of my parents being intact. They were intact, but my decision was still mine. But I didn't want to do what he he did it because I seen him doing slavery type work. I didn't have the understanding that because he was taking care of the family and providing for his family, that his work was wholesome. I looked at it as next to slavery because he put a suit on and had to take his suit off when he got to work. My mom was seamstress, alterations expert, and tailor. My mom's was the lady that everybody in the neighborhood knew. She did everybody's clothes. She did the doctor's clothes, she did the pimp's clothes, she did the player's clothes. Did not make a difference whose clothes it was. On Friday night, everybody was at my house. And during that time, we had community. People had to start running to the counters. Now they run to the counters and they get a little bit of money. Well, what happened, my mom's, man, I didn't want to do what she did because, see, the other thing is my mom sold clothes and made clothes for white folks. And I always picture my mom's, the old slavery movies, right? So y'all don't get them, which we did during that time, because everything we turned on, somebody stepping flexion and all of that. So that's how I kind of see my mom's, right? And I didn't have that level of understanding. I was saying, yeah, I'm telling you that a lot of what I seen had me really, really angry. But I didn't want to do what my mom's there either. So during this assignment, I had to document all of that. What happened? Did I want to be what they were? No. Then the question is, what do I want? Now, mind you, this is from 1960s to 1989, and I told you who I was, this very proud, very black person. What I found out in doing that assignment, that there was a layer of me that still wanted to be white. See, what did I want to do? I wanted to do something white out. I wanted to make sure that what I did was in an office like white folks. That may not be important to you, but to me, when I looked at that, it frightened me, and I said, where did that come from? Now, I already knew about post-traumatic slavery, but I didn't understand the layers of how the mind works. I did not understand that there was a whole layer of programming that was underneath all the other programming. So I had to begin to identify now that you got to go back to the drawing board to find out what's really going on up in there. Now, one of the things that I talked about is the filters that we have to have in order to be conscious. Being online, right? I go online a lot. I don't do that on my phone. I don't have a whole bunch of apps on my phone. If it ain't computer, I don't go on. We go on Facebook Live. We go on Facebook Live, and I don't have it on my phone. So in order to do Facebook Live, you have to have it on your phone. Fortunately, I have it on another little gadget, because I'm not going to put that stuff on my phone. But the point is, if we don't understand exactly how we've been programmed and all of the different layers, we will not come to a solution of undoing the program. Terrorism, since 1619, that introduction to this country, we have been bullied and presented and terrorized. Bullied and terrorized. Now, we know that terrorism is about making sure that you have a person afraid, having them living in perpetual fear. Now, understand that our peoples have been living in perpetual fear since 1619, which means that first layer of indoctrination was about fear and being able to survive. We were practicing survival skills, but the moment that we were afraid, we dropped the survival skills. Well, not so much dropped the survival skills, it was a whole nother layer of indoctrination. The transatlantic voyage or middle passage initiated brainwashing and terrorism, a process of behavior modification. This exercise of terrorism used force and involved the infliction of bodily pain or injury, including the destruction of life itself, and the frustration of the basic biological needs. It may also involve the construction of human and physical obstacles to constrain or restrict the freedom and range of movement of another person or group. This imposed fear and confusion. This first stage of behavior modification, the behavior is to be modified, its resistance is passivity. The reward is minimized pain or the longevity of life. The goal is to render the prisoners powerless, without effect or influence, to be nothing, of no account, to be of worker servants, be oriented without resistance. The reward would be life or freedom from pain, brainwashing. The terrorism continued and magnified in plantation life. Terrorism, the pervading thought of impending doom, the fear of death, bodily harm, separation from family, and harm of family. I want to use a quote from Zora Neale Hurston's book about the last slave that made the transatlantic voyage, the last slave that made the transatlantic voyage. The excerpt from the conversation between Zora Neale Hurston and Cujo Lewis, who was the last survivor of the transatlantic journey. How do you feel today? He said, I thank God. I'm on praying ground in Bible country. Yeah, in Afliki, in Africa, we always knew there was a God. His name was Asher. But poor Africans, we can't read the Bible, so we don't know God got a son. We ain't ignorant, we just don't know. Nobody done tell us about Adam eating the apple. We didn't know the 7 seals were sealed against us. Our parents don't tell us that. They didn't tell us about the first days. No, that's right. We just don't know. Thank you, Jesus. Cujo Lewis was a Nigerian born in New York with crackers. However, he was captured at the age of 5 and never was officially orientated into Orisha. The reason why I point that out is because coming from Africa, the first level of indoctrination or the second level of indoctrination, which is the plantation life, he was introduced to the religious code of Christianity. It amazes me that he had adopted that way of thinking, or a way of thinking that God, that his parents never taught him the right thing about God. It was almost something like Shaba was saying earlier. He was saying that I didn't know that Jesus and God had a son. That was pure indoctrination, which is a part of the second level of the brainwashing, that plantation life. That on that plantation life, even though it's still terrorism involved, it was more subtle. It was more about being programmed through different rewards, in as much as also being terrorized. The religiosity at that point was introduced on a whole lot of different levels. Master, the only book that they let him read was the Bible, so therefore there was a whole lot of other nations. The second stage of the plantation life introduced a design and supported a new coerced social structure, a structure filled with psychological norms, under the guise of spiritual principles rolled out as a new religious doctrine, from ancestral God to being born again, from paganistic thinking to needing a savior. Excerpts from that conversation. The religious social doctrine is still fueled by terrorism, indigenous to a social order whose cultural foundation is based on and derived from spirituality. A self-serving religious practice of acknowledging the Creator would be an ideal construct for behavior modification. The Christian basis for reward and punishment in afterlife was altered from acknowledging ancestors and rituals associated to honor those who came before us. Identifying a God system or practice is taught by whoever has control of your training. And usually the individual representative of that system is the image of God and the example of God or God themselves. The third level, or the third stage of behavior modification is from 1865 to 1954. We call that Reconstruction or Jim Crow. It's that separate but equal judicial, political, legal, social marginalization. The Reconstruction continues the terroristic behavior under the guise of law enforcement. Now implementing marginalization, the destruction of shanties and ghettos to contain the brainwashed persecution under the guise of emancipation and indoctrination, seek through education and religion. America's #1 indoctrination in the guise of freedom. I think that each of the stages are meant to foster a false security of achievement, imagination advancement, the hope, the vision of freedom. Before the doors closed again, thus a new beginning, taking the band-aid off the sore of oppression, a fused yet deeper indoctrination. Christianity having been seen as the motivation for obedient living fosters rewards in this life and the next. The Emancipation Proclamation, the document of the so-called freedom, denoted the privilege to be granted and permission to imitate our captors. We were even assigned a sector for duplication, the so-called education and indoctrination. One of the things, I think that one of the reasons that I wrote this is I have a challenge in dealing with lots of people when we start dissing each other for our personal belief systems. When we start, when I grew up, Malcolm X was a Muslim, still is a Muslim. Martin Luther King is a Christian, still a Christian. But today, when a person acknowledges that's their belief system, most of the time we don't even give it any kind of respect or consideration. Now, I think that it's really important that we start giving people consideration from where they came from in their own belief systems. If we, as Kemetic people, as people coming from Kemet, we know that we are God. We know that we are God. We have no problem with our godliness. However, if everything that came after us was developed based on what they stole from us, it still have the essence of us. Which means that if I really understand that, when I start looking at Christianity instead of looking at the doctrine itself, If I look at the spiritual principles that it's based on, I have an understanding that it's still mine. And if I have that understanding, I have no right to, I have the right, but I need to make sure that when I address my brother that have that belief, I address him from a spiritual plane to be able to listen to him. The same thing with Islam. I mean, I'm a person that has practiced and studied all of them, so I understand the essence of all of them. I understand that all of them have that same type of essence. But the thing that gets me is we will beat each other up because we mention the name of another deity. How are we going to practice unity if we do that? How are we ever going to get together if we don't start to listen to each other and give each other the consideration that we deserve to have? I always talk, one of the things that I talk about with that consideration is we gotta be careful of what we say and what we think. If we understand that our minds have been programmed, then we also need to understand that we need to reprogram our minds. If everything starts with the power of thought, then I need to be very vigilant on what I think. You know, the brain never forgets anything at all. Everything starts with the power of thought. So the spoken word is the thought energized. What I need to make sure is I pay very close attention to what I put inside of my mind. The brain never forgets anything. The brain never forgets anything. The brain never forgets anything. What you think about all day is what you become. I always use an example just to show you how the brain operates and how for so many years I thought that I was more conscious than I was. Got some mature people in here. Humpty Dumpty sat on a little bowl, jacking. If you haven't heard any of those nursery rhymes in 20 to 30 years, that means that you've been programmed quite well if you knew what I was saying. And to understand that since the brain never forgets anything, all someone has to do is give you the right prompt, and any programming that they have instilled in you, they can bring alive. And when we look at being miseducated in the American public school system, I grew up in Baltimore, in the Baltimore public school system. But I've lived in St. Louis, I've lived in New York, I've lived in Chicago, presently I'm in DC, and I can tell you that all of those systems still teach you all of the same stuff, which means that all of us have been programmed on some real deep levels. Now, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. I'm clear about that. But the point more than anything else is what are we going to do? I mean, I've talked about the separations that we have. I do it myself sometimes. When I hear somebody talking about something that I don't agree with, instead of supporting what they're saying, I tear them down as though my belief is the only belief. We will not create unity if we continue to do that. One of the main reasons that I do what I do is I work towards unity. I work towards us being able to say the same thing at the same time for the same reason. If we're not able to do that, and I'm not saying you got to be what I am, but I am saying that if you don't believe the same identical thoughts that I do, that you should not tear mine down. And we do that to each other all the time. That's not unity. If we ever come to, we God, right? We gods, right? And if we gods, then if we come to a consciousness of saying the same thing at the same time and thinking the same thing at the same time, then we should be able to change our present reality. When are we going to be willing to do that? I mean, what's the thought? What's one single thought that we should have? Now, anybody, give me one single thought that we should have.
Liberation.
Liberation. I love that one there. Now, does everybody agree with that? Wow. Now, we're going to be able to call on the power of liberation at the same time, every time, in order to create that unity. I mean, I challenge us. I challenge us. Because every time I say this to somebody, they always ask me, what should we think? Well, if I don't want to do that. Because if it's left up to me, then I'll be in my personal thought systems, but it will deny yours. 9 times out of 10, when I'm talking to anybody, I allow them to be who they are. I don't attempt to make them me. Like I said, I've been with the Moors, I've been with the Muslims, I've been with the Nation of Islam, because that's a different separation of Muslim. In fact, that's how I was introduced to Islam, to Muslim Reliance Muhammad during that period of time. Now, I've been with the Panthers. It's not a lot that I haven't been with, but what I have found out that all of us have the same ideals, but because of belief systems and the basic doctrines that we hold fast to, we cannot unify. We got to get past that. We got to get past that. At one point, we were all saying, Salam Alaikum. I don't even hear nobody say Salam Alaikum anymore. We graduated from Salam Alaikum. Now we're in Hotep. But then you got a crew of people call us the Hoteps, the people that say Hotep. But yet, they're supposed to be practicing unity also. You have the Moors, right? And if you don't have a nationality card, then they're looking down at you. We're playing right in the white folks' race. We've got all these different ideologies, and we can't get together as one. So what we want to do? I mean, let's talk about that right now. Let's talk about if amongst us in here right now decide that we're going to have the same thought at the same time, at the same day, then we're moving forward than anybody else. I mean, that's a prayer. But if everybody, Black Awakening Movement, we're from 5 or 6 different parts of the country. Majority of everybody in here is pretty much from Miami or the Florida area, but that's a start. Liberation is a good term. Does that carry the power and energy that we want? Because we know words have energy. You speak the word, like G. Kundu being it is. The words that we speak have energy. Is that the energy that we want to make sure that we transmit? That's a question. That's a question. Because when it comes to this point, I don't have an answer. I have an answer, like all of us have an answer. But only we together have the answer. And that's what we have to be. We need to make sure that we're talking with each other through real communication and not judging each other based on hey, look, if I'm God, then I have the ability to be able to change anything and use anything as a power. If we all know that we're God, it don't make a difference whether I allow somebody to be a Christian, whether I allow somebody to be a Muslim. I'm talking spiritual, I'm not talking doctrine. Because that's what we're united. That's the system of God. The system is God. It's through the Spirit. It's not through the doctrine. What we allow white folks to do is give us their doctrine and teach those doctrines, and then we become separated. When we start unifying with the Spirit, then we become one. And that's what the goal is. That's the goal when The Nation of Islam, you know, the Nation of Islam is a nation within a nation. And the only one we got. We don't have no more nation within a nation in America. They got their own educational system. That's what a nation has. They got their own police force, and which used to be more violent. I mean, I remember in the D.C. area, man, we had took over a whole complex and dared police to come in it. We protected our own, have our own diet, own foods. At one point, we had our own farms. But then we also talk about the nation. Well, you know, that Farrakhan, he was paid out by the government. Well, check this out. What do nations do? Nations make agreements to protect their own. So we can't fault them if that is a fact. Because that's what nations do. The thing is, instead of criticizing, we need to become a nation of our own. Or we're showing what a nation is already existing. But we cannot keep doing it if we keep looking and judging each other. We can't keep doing it. We would not get past the point that we've gotten. When I grew up, we had unity. In the 60s, in the 70s, oh man, I mean, it was to do your own thing piece. We did a whole, in fact, that's what crippled us. We started doing our own thing in individualism instead of unity. And that crippled us. But yet at the same time, I see more collectiveness of us doing things together than I ever have witnessed since then. And we need to make sure that we at least get back to that. So what are some of the suggestions that you would have of making sure that we come to a consciousness of one thought, creating unity? I know everybody generally have a response to that because most of us, we will sit down and we will talk to somebody and we'll grab somebody as soon as they get out there and we'll let them know exactly what we think needs to be done. Well, here's a chance. Let us know what needs to be done. We need to do it together, y'all. This is a forum. I do this, when I talk about this level of unity, I think that we need to start communicating, this is what we need to do. But not for the point of tearing each other down, y'all. Not for the point of me looking at you and saying, no, you're not right. One of the things I'm able to do is allow people to be who they are. If I don't agree with your doctrine and your ideology, I look for the spiritual content of it and attempt to unify with it. And that's what we have to be, but do we know how to do that? Do we know how to actually, first, I'm going to tell you how we do it. First of all, we got to stop looking at ourselves and being so big. We have to kind of make ourselves a little bit less than in the sense of being unified with each other. Instead of me saying that I know, it's probably more important for me to say we can do it together. And I'm willing to listen to you so I'll know exactly what you do. Because all of us are guilty. All of us are guilty. We need to make sure, and I'm saying we need to make sure that we're able to listen to each other. Now, we're on different time levels, so that means that we would have to listen to each other. If we were going to call on the spirit of liberation, we would have to make sure that we knew the different time levels so we could all call on that spirit together. Would we chant it? Would we write it? How would we increase the vibration to make sure that we call on it together? Because we get confused on all of those levels too. Some of us don't want to read, so we ain't going to write it. Some of us, we don't want to do it the way that you do. I mean, come on, y'all. Come on. And I think we got to do, man. man, we got the youth, so we got to make another kind of example for the youth to make sure that the youth know how to listen to each other. If we are not examples of how to listen to each other, we'll never move forward. I am not a naysayer. If I thought that the work that we do would not be successful, I would do it. I wholeheartedly believe, and I don't think it'll be in my time. I really don't think it'll be in my time. And it could be, because we get guys like that orange-haired guy that live a few blocks from me, right? We get people like that, and we might all decide to do something different. Everything starts with the power of God. Everything starts with the power of God. Everything starts with the power of God. The spoken word of God energized. What we think about all day is what we become. What do you think about all day? Do you think about what time does power come on tonight? Do you think about what am I going to eat for dinner? What do you think about all day? What do you think about all day? It has to be a level, or it has to be totally, the only way that we're going to unify is we have to learn to think about the same thing at the same time with consistency. Now I'm going to say that 12 o'clock in the afternoon, Eastern Standard Time, I'm going to make sure that I say, and I'm going to give myself 5 minutes either way, that I believe in unity in the name of black folks. Now, that may not make sense to you, but that's where we can start. That's where we can start. And if we don't start somewhere, we will not get to the end. We cannot consistently keep thinking different things and thinking that we're going to achieve the unity that we say we want. Good, better, best. Never let it rest. Till your good is better and your better is best. Excellent is possible. Good is not enough. Questions, comments? One of the things I'm going to make sure that everybody can hear your question, I think that one of the things that we need to do is to stop fearing ourselves.
We are scared to make moves with each other because we feel they don't take benefits. Our own brother, our own sister. But at the same time, we'll turn around and keep getting smiled. And our somebody like the other race. We want to go race of the culture. Smile on their face and everything instead of just learning to every day you walk past somebody that's your same culture center. How you doing? Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Look them in the eyes. Think you walk past, regardless how old or how young they are. You have to identify them. Let them know you see them so they can see you. And that's one thing we don't do. Too much time. I go to work. I go to the city of Miami Beach. People I've been seeing for years. Walk past them, don't acknowledge each other. And that's where we mess up. We don't know how to acknowledge each other. When we see so-called boss man or the next white person, we sure, hey, how you doing? Because we don't want them to feel us. But we feel each other. We're scared when they move each other.
I definitely agree with that. Sometimes I'm guilty of that myself. You know, because I was on the street, and I know how treacherous I have been. But I walk by a bunch of brothers every morning, and you can't even get past the corner because they're on the corner. But you know, one of the most refreshing feelings I have, one of them catch my eye and say, "How you doing, brother?" Because they know, yeah, you're right, man. And that's important. I can't tell you what's going on in your heart in order for you to have that level of fear. But also I know that the people in this room are not, and I like to believe that the people in this room are not the people that don't do that. So oftentimes when we are giving out a lot of the information, we're giving it out to the choir. We're the people that do it anyway. One of the greatest feelings I have in the world when I walk down the street, got a little tune going, and a brother say, "What's up?" Man, I feel like, whoo, you know? And that's important. But you got to get it out regularly. That's what you got to be all the time. You can't make somebody let you be something other than what you are. You have to be that, no matter what, because that's who you are. That's integrity. Who are you when nobody's looking? Anybody? Comments, questions?
I gotta know. Everybody needs to stop looking for a leader. Because everybody is looking for that Martin Luther King and our place. If you understand that you can just be a leader by example, you don't have to worry about other people following because they'll see when they say that. That's the number one way. Everybody around waiting for somebody to lead, somebody to stand up and talk for us. We don't need to lead.
You know, the Black Awakening movement, and I was introduced to the Black Awakening movement during the Justice for I call it the Second Meeting Man March. That's what it was for me. And that's what I met Sister Rhonda. She introduced the concept of the Black Awakening movement. And what you just said is how our body operates. We have a group of leaders. Everybody's a leader. And that's how we operate. Now, I'm going to tell you honestly, prior to that time, now, I didn't see how that could work. That's amazing. It works quite well because of all the sub leaders.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think one of the biggest concerns for me personally is working with the youth in inner city at age 18 to 24. When you look around, it's the age that's always missing, no matter what venue you go to. And I know the internet and social media play a very role in regards to communication, where they're not engaged with it. It's like a gap between the age of 18 to 24 and 40 and up. What obstacles do you think you can utilize to help get the 18 to 24 troublemakers to be engaged with the choir? It's like a gap, it's like we can break.
First, I'm not necessarily the best person to answer and respond to that, but one of the things is to learn how to utilize that social media, learn how to utilize it to the degree that we can impact some consciousness or impact that particular ideology and age group's consciousness. Shabba, you got something on that?
I think that one of the things we have to do with that 18 to 24-year-old group is stop giving them the idea in their heads that once they're 18, they're on their own. That's something that we do as adults that really alienates them. So now you tell them from about age 10 to age 18, once you get 18, you gotta get out of there. You're on your own, you gotta figure it out. You're not always gonna be there. So then when they get to 18 and 24, guess what? You can't talk to them.
Well, the reason why we get our ideas of parenting from the alien culture. That idea of 18 kicking out, whatever, you're on your own, that didn't come from us. That came from another culture. And so that's why we have trouble in that age because instinctively there's something wrong with it, but we fight against it.
We give up our responsibility to them and tell them it's time for them to figure it out. So what we need to do is we need to find a way to connect where we again take ownership of that 18 to 24-year-old group and say, okay, you've gone from the preteen stage to the adolescent
Okay, hold this.
Yeah.
So, with that age group, I think one of the things that's missing is reminding them of their greatness. Letting them know that the civil rights movement was led by that age group, pretty much. You know, teens, they have this awesome power, this magnetic power, where they get to this playing field, this generation for a time such as this, and their power is hyper-active. This is why they're kind of like the new descendants that are like really just powerful and reminding them of that greatness. That 18 to 24 is the right time, to really claim and hone in on their power. Let them know about movements that started with teens at 15 years old. And by 36, Martin King had this, or Malcolm X had this, by 36, Martin was, like had already covered, so like between the teens and the early 20s, this is when we lead. This is when we exercise. This is when we listen to the elders. This is when we gain all that momentum. And I think what's missing, I'm working with the youth. I'm in school right now, getting my PhD. I'm 1 year away from becoming a doctor. So just sitting in the back listening, one thing I do know with teaching college students, because I teach college students at the University of Miami, is reminding them of that greatness. Letting them know that you are powerful beyond measure. That people are afraid of you because you are of God. Like that to me is the thing that helped save me when I was 18. Somebody put me to the side, like, hey sis, write that poetry. Start that business. You are bad, you're beautiful. You are bad to the bone. You're not just bad in the streets. So I think that's what's missing is the reminder. Because if we count on society to remind them, that's not going to happen. They're going to tell them miscreants. But if we remind them, they will remember that the God is greater that's within them.
Absolutely. But one of the things that we cannot forget, we allow them to go in their school systems where there are other underlying programs permeating their brain to the degree that even when we tell them about their greatness, they have doubts. So we got to start talking about taking some school systems over and building some schools. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And the reason where I see this problem stems from is because of the lack of guidance and leadership in the home, in the Black homes. Majority, these children, once they reach 18 to 24, they're pretty much on their own because there's not enough financial means in the parent is usually not around. Because to live in today's society, today's world, you need at least 2 to 3 paychecks to get by. So when you're not present in the home to lead and guide these youths, they have to find guidance elsewhere. So I think that we as the adults, we need to go out there, and if we see a single parent family, or if we see a youth that is misguided and going to the right direction, we as elders need to do our job and get involved and try to mentor our young people and lead them in the right direction that they need to go. Give them encouragement because maybe they don't have that stability around them.
I agree. Let me say that one of the things, there are so many different things that we know that we need to do. Everybody can't do everything, but everybody can do something. You have to look within yourself to find out one of the things that you can do. I have a practice. I don't provide services directly for that age group, but I do family counseling. And I teach the parents to make sure they know how to teach the youth. We have to, we got to collectively come together and everybody do something. We have to build a community. If you're the one person in the neighborhood to do that, do that. And remember the 12 o'clock. And you can text it into the Black Awakening Movement. I believe in liberation at 12 o'clock every day. And tell the next person to do the same thing. And tell the next person to do the same thing. Or then you may have something different or better. I don't know. It doesn't make a big difference to me, except for we need to do the same thing at the same time with consistency. You have one more comment, sir?
I got two comments.
Real quick, if you got your
liberation
hand
is cool, but I would say make it one better, say black liberation. Make it more definitive.
I'm good with that. I'm good with that.
Yeah. The second thing is, I understand the brother said that we're always looking for a leader and all that stuff. I never met a leader that wasn't a follower first. Not a true leader anyway. But the thing is, there had never been a nation built that didn't have a leader. So the idea of not having no leader doesn't make sense from what I understand of history. All right, but the thing is that after Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and the Black Panther movement, we have allowed another alien culture to pick who our leaders are. They now tell you that
they pick Malcolm.
Right, no, I'm just saying, but like if you watch the news or whatever, they'll say the black leader so and so. But I ain't voted for nobody. So to be a black leader. So I think that if we are to have a leader, then somehow we have to figure out a way to cohesively get our own leaders.
Basically, when it comes to leaders, the United States is ran by a government.
Yes.
A whole bunch of people. They put a president and a representative of them to do and say what they want him to say.
Exactly.
If we had, like, say everybody here was a leader, we become a government.
Right.
To help the ones that can't speak for themselves. That's basically how we would have a nation. We build a government within ourselves. And yes, we need the black church to help out with that because you got 1,000 people, 1,000 people going to churches. They look up at one person that's getting their money. But that OCE, whatever, the thing they cannot use that money to build schools for us to educate us. Right. I work in a Jewish area in Miami Beach. Right. On college, on school, on everything right there. And they do it only for themselves and they spend money out their pockets so these certain places could flourish. The way to build a community, you gotta have your own grocery stores, you gotta have your own church, your own hospital, and you gotta have your own school. And everything around that whole area takes care of itself. What they don't allow us to do is do that. Anything that backed by blacks, they find a way to destroy it. It's been like that for years. So when I say we don't need, that's that one leader. Because one leader can control other people, they don't have backup, it's only them by themselves. But if you have a group of leaders, then they can.
Hold it.
Yeah, that's it.
Yo, we get ready to go. We have an open discussion every Thursday online. The comments are welcome. We come from a culture that we've had a council of leaders.
Exactly.
I would want to add is protect your mind. Protect your mind. Be vigilant of what you allow in because it does make you who you are. What you think about all day, you become. I mean, legitimately, make sure that you listen to stuff that's going to cultivate your mind. Don't go to sleep with the idiot box on because it will make you an idiot. If you're going to go to sleep, put something on intentionally and on purpose to program your mind. Because what you think about all day, you will become.
I said, Thank you. I just want to say quickly before we wrap up, because we do have to be out of this building very soon. But I want to give my thanks and my gratitude to these three people standing right here. When I first started the Black Awakening movement, I did not know the power, the energy, the people that would come and be a part of it. And these people right here that you see standing, not only have they given their time, their energy, their money, their effort to the Black Awakening movement, they've come from far distances. Shaw is here, but he doesn't live close to here. And I really just want to express my appreciation for what they've done. And to have the elders guide us at this time is so important. That's our culture, that's us. We have the elders guiding us, we have our ancestors guiding us. It's not just about us and us being individuals. It's about what Bill was saying. We got to get out of just us, you know, as individuals, but it's us together. This is unity. So please, can we give another round of applause? Stay connected to the Black Awakening movement. As was mentioned earlier, we hold open discussions every Thursday at 7 o'clock. So if you want to talk about this stuff, we're going to keep talking about it. And we also going to talk about solutions, what we need to do. We are going to end white supremacy. We are going to achieve freedom. That's what we're going to do as a people. And we got to keep thinking that, because the more we think it, the more it's going to happen. And we're going to put it into action to do it. So please stay in contact with us. Grab a handout. Please follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Black Awakening Movement. Send an email, blackawakeningmovement@gmail.com. If you don't use any of that technology, get with Bob. He has the phone number for the conference call. You can just dial in every Thursday and come on the call. Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for being here. We're getting ready to pack up. If you want to help us put up a chair, we appreciate it. I'm going to share a poem as we're packing up, but thank you. Thank you so much. Peace and hotel.